Homemakers shouldn't be extravagant. The electricity bill is $3, and daily food costs should also be $3. Upon my return from shopping, that's what David said to me. Show me what's in those shopping bags, Sarah. Okay, but why? Taken aback, I handed over the shopping bags. David peeked inside. Don't need this. Don't need that either. Saying that, he kept moving items to a different bag. As I was wondering what he was doing, David showed me the bag he had prepared. We don't need sweets. Return them. But those are my little joys during my chores. Didn't you hear me? Furious, David thrusted the bag at me. How many times do I have to say it? Daily food cost is $3. We don't need sweets. With that, he stormed off with loud steps. Then, settling onto the couch, he started to read the newspaper. Watching that, I was at a loss for words. As I stood there holding the bag he had thrusted at me, David spoke with irritation. Return them quick. The grocery store is a 10-minute walk away. It's the peak of summer, and it's so hot outside that it feels like everything's gonna melt. I had just gotten back, drenched in sweat from shopping. And now he wants me to make that trip again. And that's just to return the sweets I bought. I couldn't move from that spot. David. Do you care about money more than me? Sure, saving is important. But aren't there more vital things in life? Enough. Holding the bag, I began walking, making a vow. I'll show you. This so-called frugality. David. Be ready. My saving skills are unparalleled. My name is Sarah Smith. I'm turning 27 this year. I've been married to my husband David for 2 years. David has always been a bit neurotic. He graduated from a prestigious university, and everyone acknowledges him as a smart person. His intellect was one of the things that attracted me. But after getting married and living together, his nitpicking nature became all too evident. Sarah, did you clean thoroughly? The windows are foggy. Yeah. David was shouting by the window. I approached with a sigh. I'm a homemaker, but there are other household chores, starting with cooking. I can't be cleaning all day. Regardless, David would inspect the entire house, pinpoint shortcomings, and blame me. What have you been doing while I was at work? What do you think? Household chores, obviously. You can't even handle household chores properly, and yet you're watching TV bossily? I sighed deeply. Everyone needs a break. Besides, I was only watching TV for a few minutes. That's when David came home and started inspecting the house. Hey, David. What's this? Now he's checking the contents of the fridge. What caught David's eye was a basket of fruit. I didn't buy it. It was a gift from our neighbor. I was thinking about eating it together after chilling it. You accept stuff like this. Why didn't you ask me if you could take it? But I was about to say that we shouldn't dismiss such a warm thoughtfulness. David began to talk before I did. It's not but. Don't accept gifts like this again. Got it? David lectured me as if he was talking to a child. I felt disheartened. I got it. David sometimes treats me like a child. One of our acquaintances even mentioned that she felt he looked down on her. I can't blame her. Even I sometimes feel the same way. Indeed, I have a high school diploma, but I'm still less educated than David. However, I never thought that made me any less of a person. But it seems David feels differently. You're a troublesome person, Sarah. You never know what mistakes you're gonna make if I'm not watching. I was taken aback by David's words. He never saw me as an equal. This realization saddened me. For someone with such a high educational background, David's earnings aren't that great. He works for a mid-tier company, and there's no sign of a promotion anytime soon. Yet, he looks down on his colleagues. It's just so frustrating. My boss is just not smart. That was David's usual complaint. I don't know David's boss. From what I've heard, he seems to be David's nemesis. I wonder what the real story is. David has a habit of exaggerating when he gets worked up. So, I can't take everything David says at face value. David mostly vents during dinner. Drinking beer, his face flushes as he complains about work. That guy, you know. Yeah. All I can do is nod. I don't even know whether the person David's talking about is his boss, a colleague, or a junior. How am I supposed to react to stories about people I don't even know their faces? Slowly, David's mood begins to sour. You're pretty cold, you know? What? After all the hardships I've been through, you just stand there laughing. It's like it doesn't concern you at all. With that, he looked at me with disappointed eyes. That was unexpected, I felt. I don't think it's none of my business. I believe David is really trying. But, he's just not getting the recognition he deserves. I understand why he's frustrated with his coworkers and job. David, I don't really know much about your job or workplace. That's why I'm explaining it to you. You just don't get it. Saying this bluntly, David chugged down his beer. I was at a loss for words. A few days later. Hey, I ran into a university buddy in front of the station today. He wants to come over. I got such a call from David on his way home. I panicked. How could he expect me to prepare for a guest at this hour? I had only prepared dinner for the two of us, just the usual dishes. I'd have to run to the grocery store now, buy some food, or set out some ready-made meals. That's impossible, at this hour. It's fine, it's fine. Just whip something up. With that, David hung up. I didn't even have time to think. I quickly put on makeup and hopped on my bike. I stopped at a convenience store closer than the grocery store and bought some booze and snacks. That'll do. I'm home. Welcome back. Oh, and you too. Hello, thank you for having me. David's friend mentioned he was single. Perhaps because of that, he seemed more stylish than David. It reminded me of David when we first started dating and made me feel nostalgic. I couldn't help but smile, to which David responded with annoyance. Just because this guy's handsome doesn't mean you have to keep staring. I'm not staring. I led the two to the living room. Seeing the food on the table, David's friend exclaimed in delight. I'm starving. This is great. Sarah, come here. Contrary to his friend, David looked displeased. What's this? What do you mean? It's tonight's dinner and some snacks. They're all store-bought. Did you slack off? What do you take my friend for? That's not. Tonight's dinner was salmon chowder, fried pork chops, and a tomato salad. These 3 dishes were homemade by me, while the snacks were, as David pointed out, bought from the convenience store. But David spoke as if all the dishes were store-bought. What were you doing at home? Housework, right? That's your job. Don't slack off. I didn't slack off. I just didn't have time for it. David, calm down. David's friend, seeing the tension, tried to calm David. David conspicuously sighed in response. This woman's always like this, you know. I'm struggling. David. I understood. Just as David was bad-mouthing his workplace at home, he was bad-mouthing me when he was at work or with friends. In fact, when he had a few drinks and got in the mood, David said things like this. Sarah, you're gonna cheat on me with him, aren't you? What are you talking about? Nah, I can tell. You're that kind of person. He accuses without any evidence. His friend and I managed to calm him down. After his friend left, David looked at me with crossed arms. As his drunkenness wore off, he became increasingly irritable. Sarah, can we talk? What? I had a bad feeling. But I couldn't ignore him. As I paused doing the dishes to approach him, David suddenly raised his voice. I trusted you, Sarah. And you spectacularly betrayed my trust and expectations. I was so embarrassed. He spoke as if he was the victim. I just stared blankly at David's face. He was genuinely angry. It showed on his face. But what did I do wrong? It was impossible to run to the grocery store and back in that short time, let alone cook. But when I tried to explain, David just kept saying, "You're just lazy," over and over. David's bad mood lasted for nearly 3 days. Just when I thought he had calmed down, he said, "Homemakers shouldn't be extravagant. The electricity bill is $3, and daily food costs should also be $3. With clear anger, David stated this. That day was a holiday. David was home during the day, and he greeted me when I returned from shopping. But he was still acting strange. As soon as he saw my face, the words, "Don't be extravagant," came out of his mouth. David went to the living room and started inspecting the shopping bags. "Don't need that. Don't need this either." Saying that, he kept moving items to a different bag he seemed to have prepared in advance. I was wondering what he was doing. Then, David thrusted this bag at me. "We don't need sweets. Return them." But those are my little joys during my chores. "Didn't you hear me?" David was furious. I was taken aback by his tone. "How many times do I have to say it? Daily food cost is $3. We don't need sweets. Return them quick," said David. I was at a loss for words. I looked outside the window. It's the peak of summer now, and it's so hot outside that it feels like everything's gonna melt. The grocery store is a 10-minute walk away. And now he wants me to make that trip again. And that's just to return the things I bought. Even now, sweat is trickling down my forehead. I wish David would drive me there, but he was just sitting on the couch, showing no intention of moving. David never considered my health. Walking around in this heat was just too much. I might pass out. I tried conveying that with my eyes, but David ignored me and continued reading his newspaper. Fine then. I picked up the bag and started walking. All right then. I'll show him. This so-called frugality. Fueled by anger, I didn't mind the heat at all. I continued walking silently, accomplished what I had to at the grocery store, and returned home. "You can do it if you try, can't you?" David said, looking pleased. He still hasn't realized my true feelings. David. I've reached my breaking point. I can't put up with David's paranoia any longer. I can't break up with him until I surprise him. From that day, I embodied frugality. "What? What's this?" David, returning from work, was taken aback. I said matter-of-factly, "I sold all the electronic appliances to save on the electric bill." "What the hell are you thinking?" David yelled, but I ignored him. In the living room, there are just a table and 2 chairs. All the other furniture was gone. Oh, by the way, I also sold that component stereo David cherished so much. "Sarah! How could you do that? Are you serious? Tell me you're joking." Dead serious. I laughed as if David was joking. After all, we're trying to save on electricity, right? So, you gotta help out too. I told you to save money. I never lived extravagantly to begin with. I didn't live extravagantly either. I held back my emotions, just maintaining a smile. I can't let myself get angry too. I told it to myself and continued. "But since you said it, David, I decided to try my best." "That's what you wanted, right?" "Yes, but still there's a limit, Sarah. Where did you sell them?" "We need to get them back." "Forget that for now. Dinner's getting cold. We don't have a microwave anymore, so if it gets cold, you'll have to eat as it remains cold." Hearing this, David hurriedly sat at the table. I followed him with a wry smile. As David was about to sit, his expression froze. "What's this?" "It's dinner," I cheerfully replied. "Green beans stir-fry, mixed bean soup, and then—" "They're all beans!" David exclaimed in horror. I think David was neither particularly fond of beans nor disliked them. But now, he seemed terrified by the pile of beans in front of him. "You're trying to save on groceries, right? Then, we've got to make do with cheap ingredients." If you don't buy sweets. That's it. The discounted ready-to-eat meals. You don't like prepared meals, right? I said coldly, changing my tone. Besides, even the discounted items cost $2. We can't afford that. What about beer? None. I thought he'd have guessed by the fact we had no fridge, but David looked close to tears when he heard there was no beer. So, from now on, we're going to eat beans every day? If I find cheaper ingredients, I'll consider alternatives to beans. I said so and sang the prayer before the meal. Eat up quick. Green beans stir-fries getting cold. I can't live like this. It's been 2 weeks since we started living frugally. David said, his head slumped over the table. Sarah, give me a break. I was wrong. This is just too much. Let's save money in a more reasonable way. What are you talking about? I was quite excited. Once I started, I enjoyed frugal living. Having almost no furniture makes cleaning easy. David begged desperately. If you're gonna continue this frugal lifestyle, break up with me. David, you suggested it, remember? I said, feigning surprise. David just shook his head. I'm tired from work. I just want to relax at home. It's only stressful in this environment. We do have the air conditioner on. In this heat. If there wasn't. But I went shopping under the blazing sun, twice back and forth, because you said so. I said it like it was no big deal. But I was angry inside. David was too selfish. He never even tried to understand why I started this lifestyle. I'm not breaking up. Sarah! David looked at me in shock. My love for David was almost gone too. This was revenge. I wasn't going to let him off the hook so easily. He needed to taste saving a little longer. I can't stand this house anymore. Suddenly, David shouted. He stood up from his chair and walked out of the living room. David? I'm going back to my parents' house. I'll send the petition for divorce to the court, so see you at a hearing. Saying that, he walked from the hallway to the entrance, got out, and got into his car. Apparently, he was heading to my parents-in-law's house. I didn't care. David will be back soon anyway. Sure enough, a few hours later, David made me a call. Sarah, what the heck did you tell my folks? David's voice was trembling. With a wry smile, I replied. I told your mom about everything you've done to me so far. I asked her, is this how you raised him? You did what? Of course she didn't remember having done that. She was shocked to hear how you've been acting. I ain't making things up. Unlike you. I've got my proof too. I've been secretly recording my talks with David. When I played it to my mother-in-law, she was so shocked that she was crying over the phone. As you ran your mouth too much, my dad chewed me out and kicked me out of the house. That's rough. I nodded, as if it wasn't my problem. Honestly, I can't see why David's so mad. All I did was tell the truth. As a result, it was my parents-in-law's decision to kick out David. More to the point, David got what he deserved. It ain't just about how my parents-in-law acted. The fact that our meals became beans-centered and that I sold appliances were all triggered by David's words. Now they want me to go home and make it up to you. They're all siding with you. Sarah, what did you say to them? I ain't done anything. Even amazed at David's paranoia, I carried on. David, if you're so keen on splitting up, I'll give in to the divorce. For real? Yeah, but there's a condition. Out with it. David was all fired up. He really wanted to get divorced. At the same time, I wondered if a woman who was David's ideal really could happen to exist in this world. Give me $100,000. So that I can live peacefully after we split up. 100,000. Stop joking. I don't have such many properties to divide. But if we keep living frugally, I think we can save up that much. Till then, no way I'm agreeing to a divorce. That's nuts. David shouted it was crazy. But it ain't crazy. If we live frugally, we need a goal. I just smiled. I rubbed my still flat belly. I think it's better than monthly child support. Child support? Don't tell me. Over the phone, I nodded, saying, That's right. I'm 3 months pregnant. The reason I won't divorce you is this baby. Don't kid yourself thinking I still have feelings for ya. Sarah, did you tell that to my parents? Sure did. Speaking of which, they're probably even more panicked now. David was lost for words. I guess this pregnancy was the worst news for him. But it ain't the kid's fault. I'm excited for when the little one arrives, and I know I gotta save for them. Don't worry. We'll look for recipes and ingredients that are cheap, not just beans. And we won't sell the heating and cooling system. We gotta think of our child after all. David was now in tears. After being driven out of his parents' house, David had lost a place to go. With a child on the way, pushing for a divorce would be difficult. Got it. All right then. Come back soon. I ended the call with a smile. Ever since that day, David stopped criticizing my housework. He still didn't help out, but the fact that he stopped saying anything was a big relief for me. Mommy. Oh, Catherine, what's up? I turned around with a smile. A girl was born. Her name was Catherine. Catherine didn't get close to David. At first, David was fond of her, but she cried every time he picked her up, so he eventually stopped paying attention to her. Today, I drew this at kindergarten. Oh, that's so good. Did you draw me? Yes. Looking at Catherine, I could see features of David in her. But her personality was straightforward and not at all like David's domineering nature. I was relieved about that. Daddy's late again today, isn't he? Yeah, he's swamped at work. David had been taking on more overtime and working weekends since then. The fact that David wasn't lying was evident from his paychecks. He seemed to make a lot of mistakes in his crucial work, and climbing the corporate ladder seemed distant, but he was hell-bent on making money. You really want to get divorced soon? I asked David when he came home late at night. Definitely. Without looking at me, David replied, I'm gonna leave this house as soon as possible and get back to a life with TV and music. All right, good luck with that. David was working hard to reach his target. On my end, I continued to save money as a hobby, not as a punishment. David had grown to despise saving, but it was his idea in the first place. He had to take responsibility. David worked tirelessly and even went to the extent of asking favors from friends and acquaintances. Eventually, he seemed to have gathered the promised amount. If the wife is saving, the husband's gotta work hard, right? Yeah, that's right. Looking exhausted, David left my side. I didn't know where he was headed, especially after losing the trust of Sarah's parents. Well, then. I looked around the room. Perhaps I could be called a minimalist. Living with only essential furniture seems to suit me well. Catherine had adjusted to this lifestyle too. Drawing was Catherine's hobby, and she was often praised by others for having a knack for it since she was little. In fact, her dream now was to become a cartoonist. She had just started elementary school this year, but her drawings were already better than mine. My classmates also praise my drawings. That's great to hear. If Catherine stays on track, she'll probably go to an art college someday. The money I've saved up will come in handy then. On top of that, I've been receiving child support from David for Catherine. So, I didn't intend to use it for daily expenses. Well, Mom's gonna work now. Okay. I couldn't leave Catherine, an elementary school student, alone at home. After some thought, I started doing transcription work from home. The work is repetitive, but by focusing at set times, I could get a sense of accomplishment. Mom? What's up? I heard there's an art competition coming up. My teacher asked if I want to try it out. That's awesome. Why not give it a shot? I hugged Catherine as I said this. Catherine seemed uncertain at first, but soon nodded strongly. Yeah. I'll give it a try. That's the spirit, Catherine. I nodded in agreement. For Catherine, what should we have for our meals tomorrow? Planning meals is fun. I used to be forced to do chores before. Even if I cooked, David never said it was delicious. He was checking every corner of the room, looking for any oversight. I used to dread household chores. I was always anxious that I might have done something wrong or that he would complain. But now it's different. Now, I have Catherine who appreciates my cooking. I never imagined that it could make household chores so enjoyable. My life is fulfilling now.